You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. We are 1 week away from the start of the early signing period, and things are heating up. LSU staff is out on the road recruiting, in-home visits. Good time to catch up with our buddy Shea Dixon from On3, the Bengal Tiger, to get the absolute latest. Shea, we appreciate you, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. It feels like all these conversations, Shea, have to start with portal targets and gets before we even start talking about the high school targets. So you've said for a long time here that the portal approach is changing and that you anticipate LSU is going to sign single-digit players out of the portal this year. Who are some of the names that they've really narrowed a focus on at this point, a week away from the early signing period?
You know, I still stand by that. I don't think they're going to hit double digits, and they had in the prior two seasons out of necessity. Now they've got, right now currently, that they'll sign next week, 27 commitments, 26 high school guys, 1 JUCO player. Then you add from that the guys they're retaining, and for the first time, they are near that 85-man scholarship limit. So you can be, as Brian Kelly said, a lot more, and will have to be, a lot more picky with who you're going after in the portal. You're not necessarily playing for a bunch of depth pieces. You're really looking at guys who can come in and help right away. And I think that starts for me with, one, Xavier Thomas out of Mississippi State, who has already made a visit to LSU since entering the portal. This was a kid who came out of John Ehret as a 4-star, and since going to Mississippi State the past 2 seasons has been the SEC's in the top 5 nationally and among the best in the SEC as a punt returner. He scored a kick return touchdown this year in a big moment against Texas A&M right at out of the gates. I think it was the first play of the game. But also on a very bad state offense this year that was 13th of 14 teams in the SEC. He went over 500 yards receiving. So this is a Louisiana native who has a proven track record of being an excellent punt and kick returner in the SEC, which solves one issue that you've had now for 2 seasons. And he brings you a guy at receiver with multiple years left to play who can certainly battle for playing time. If you can put up over 500 yards in State's offense a year ago, that's a pretty solid showing. So wide receiver, a position where I think they could take 1 or 2. His name jumps to the forefront for me. And when I look at the defense, Matt, yeah, there's a need at D-line, but can they get Mekhi Wingo back? Can they get Mason Smith back? And you've got depth pieces with Deshaun Womack now expected to play a bigger role, and guys like Parrish Shand and Braden Swinson returning, and Savion Jones is a guy who still has eligibility remaining, obviously, and he'll be back. So I jump to defensive back and look at the corner and safety rooms. And one, I'll stick with Louisiana guys here. One of them's a kid who played his high school football on LSU's campus, in Jordan Gilbert, who played at U-High, was recruited by LSU, chose Texas A&M, started for Texas A&M, then ended up getting injured this year, but he entered the portal. He's one that I've circled from the start as someone that I think ends up being at LSU. And another is a guy who went in today, DeCamarion Richardson, who's a North Louisiana kid who played at Mississippi State, 4-year player there who has production, started a bunch of games, 20-plus games as an SEC corner, and now he'll look around, and I've heard LSU, Oregon, Texas A&M will be in the mix. So kind of to start off, I think you're just saying, hey, where do we lose guys at, or where we kind of have some shortage of roster holes at, and let's go fill them with guys we think could start or compete to start.
Shea, real quick, you also mentioned 27 high school commits. The JUCO player was Sean Washington, if I'm not mistaken, is who you're referring to, the defensive lineman. How many are expected to sign a week from today?
That's the good news. Every single one of them is expected to sign next week. So that's the benefit of the early signing period, right? That you don't now have to continue to recruit guys all the way until February, because February's signing day still does exist. There's some guys that will wait until then to sign, but those are not current LSU commits. So the plan right now from everybody we've talked to up and down the commitment list is they plan to next Wednesday morning sign the letter, send it in, and be done with their recruitment.
Shea Dixon on 3, the Bengal Tiger. He's on Twitter at Shea Dixon. It's obviously a great time to jump on the site and go check out all the info there. So this week we know the coaches are on the road. If I'm not mistaken, Shea, they were in home today over in Acadiana with Dominic McKinley. Who else are the main targets that the coaches are out seeing this week?
Yeah, Frank Wilson and Brian Kelly both went and saw Dominic McKinley, who is their top, you would say, remaining target on the board, considered he's a Louisiana guy. He's ranked as a 5-star. He's a defensive lineman coming out of Acadiana, and they're one of many teams who have made an in-home visit with him. He's still committed to Texas A&M right now, but because of the staff shakeup, he's going to wait till February to, sign anywhere. So nothing will happen there next week. It doesn't appear. He'll give LSU a look. He'll give Texas, OU, a couple of other schools that have been in the mix the whole way, a look, and then certainly get to know Elko and that new staff in College Station a bit. So that one's not done yet, and certainly you look at LSU's board, and when you look at Louisiana and look at the top 12 players in the state, LSU signed almost all of them, but McKinley's the one highly ranked guy that they're still pursuing that doesn't have that LSU logo next to commitment. So it will be very interesting to see how things play out there. And then Terry Bussey, a 5-star out of Texas, an athlete who has also been committed to A&M, is going to wait until February now because he wants to see what all the different staffs look like and then make a final decision then. So we're kind of in this period now where they're balancing bowl practice, in-home visits with current commitments, checking in on guys like McKinley and Bussey, but knowing, hey, look, if these guys are indeed waiting until February, we've got time to recruit them for a couple more months.
Shea, are there every year around signing day, there's always surprises. Either guys you get that you're not anticipating or guys you might lose that you thought you'd keep. Who are some of the names to keep an eye on a week from today that might pull a signing day surprise?
At this point, which I think is a good thing, I don't think there will be that many. LSU wanted to have between 25 and 30 signees for the early signing period, and being at 27 and signing all 27 of them next week would mean that you've done your homework. You've got it all figured out. You got the guys committed you wanted, and they aren't taking other visits here at the end on this final weekend. For instance, none of LSU's commits are expected to be on anybody else's campus this weekend, which is a little bit of a shift from maybe where seasons past have taken them, but things seem to be pretty stable with this class right now, which is made up of a lot of Louisiana and Texas guys who are local, have been visiting LSU a lot, they know what they're getting into, and at this point they feel pretty good about the decision. So unless someone pops up out of left field, really, and becomes a major player here at the end to announce for LSU next week, I think any sort of announcements or big news of new commitments would be portal and not high school.
Last thing for you here, Shea. When you look at this class in total, you mentioned the 27 commits out of high school, the JUCO player as well. Where are they strong, and where do they still have holes?
Yeah, I really like what Mike Denbrock and the staff have done to build the tight end room out. Kamorian Pimpton's the guy I think we'll get to know a lot better next year, but Trades Green up at Zachary is unbelievable. He's the number 1 tight end in the country, 6'6.5", 230, and he can jump out the gym. He's got basketball offers, including LSU. I think that Matt.
Shea, I'm sorry. Is he a potential 2-sport guy?
I think yes, he can be, and if he wants to try, go for it. We've seen all the way back to Marcus Spears and those guys try it. Yeah. Just how the two seasons blend together makes it very difficult. Okay. So, baseball, football can kind of be a thing. Football, basketball is pretty tough to pull off. Okay. But he is a very good basketball player, I will say that. So you get a guy like that in, and I just feel like next year, offensively, they're running more 2 tight end sets. It's not Jaden Daniels back there where he's going to either throw it deep to Malik or Brian, or he's going to, run and do it himself. But they're going back to running the football. They're going back to 12 personnel. And you could put a guy like Trades Green and Kamorian Pimpton out there in 2 tight end sets. And look, you've got Mason Taylor coming back, all those guys, where you've got real pass threats at tight end, which we know Kelly and Denbrock like to use. So I like the tight end spot. I think they've done very well at DB to get at least 4 corners in the boat, which I said from the start you needed at least 4 high school guys you could develop, and then they got 2 really good safeties, Deshaun McBride and Joel Rogers. Linebackers a good class. I loved here at the end that they popped Gabe Relaford and flipped him from A&M. That gave them a big-time D-line commit, who we have ranked as a top 10 D-lineman in the country. They spot recruited well, but I'll tell you what, Matt, it's probably 3 years in a row where I look up and down the commitment list and I say Brad Davis probably has the best haul once again, position-wise, of what they're bringing in. And we've seen how it's paid off. I mean, they have a very stellar O-line that's up for the Joe Moore Award again this year, as they were in 2019. He's building some really good depth. I mean, think about it. Zaylon's Hurd, a 5-star. They didn't even need him to start this year. They were able to go coast to coast with the 5 guys they had. Now, I don't know what the future holds with Dellinger and Miles Frazier if they go pro or stay, but boy, they have stacked up 3 years in a row now with Brad Davis of really good O-line classes.
Yeah. Charles Turner could return for a 6th year as well. I mean, you could have all 5 starters back on the offensive line. And you mentioned Hurd and then guys like Weston Davis who are committed. It's starting to look like the line many thought it would whenever Brian Kelly came in with that reputation, to be sure. Shea Dixon, On3, the Bengal Tiger. Make sure you're following Shea on Twitter at Shea Dixon. Good enough to visit with us here. I know it's going to be a really busy week next week, but maybe, Shea, an uneventful week. Relatively speaking. We always appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
Uneventful's not a bad thing in recruiting sometimes. Hey, let's do it next week, right before signing day.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.